Welcome to part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more folktale stories like this. The silence in the church was deafening. Ruth's accusation lingered in the air like a thundercloud, ready to burst. Helen Church's serene composure cracked ever so slightly as she locked eyes with Ruth. For the first time, there was a hint of vulnerability behind the woman who had become the towering symbol of miracles and faith. "Sister Ruth," Helen's voice rang out, steady but strained, "you speak boldly in the house of God. But I warn you, false accusations bring curses." Ruth stepped forward, her chin held high, defiant against the sea of glares and whispers around her. "False? You know what's false, Helen? Those miracles of yours," she shouted, her voice quivering with both rage and conviction. "I have proof." The congregation erupted. Some people gasped in shock, while others murmured their disbelief. Helen's closest supporters, her inner circle of ushers and assistants, glanced at one another uneasily. Helen raised her hand, and the murmurs quieted almost instantly. The command she wielded over her followers was palpable. "Proof," she said with a mocking smile. "Let us hear what you have to say, Sister Ruth. What is this proof you claim to have?" Ruth hesitated for a brief moment, scanning the room. She could feel the weight of every eye on her, but she had come too far to stop now. Taking a deep breath, she held up a small USB drive. "This," she declared, "contains recordings, documents, and testimonies from people you've deceived. From people you've paid to fake their afflictions, their healings." The tension in the church was thick enough to cut with a knife. Helen's eyes narrowed. "You dare bring lies into the house of God?" she hissed, her calm facade crumbling further. "This is nothing but the work of the devil, trying to discredit the miracles of the Lord." But Ruth didn't back down. "No, Helen," she said firmly. "The only devil here is you." The secrets begin to unravel. The events of that Sunday service sent shockwaves through Forever Living Church and beyond. Ruth's bold accusations couldn't be contained within the walls of the sanctuary. By the next day, videos of the confrontation had gone viral on social media. The hashtags #HelenChurchExposed and #FalseProphet trended worldwide. Helen retreated to her lavish home in Lekki, surrounded by her closest advisors. The sprawling mansion, with its marble floors and golden chandeliers, had once been a symbol of her divine favor. Now, it felt like a fortress under siege. "We need to respond," Pastor Kingsley said, pacing the room. He had always been Helen's mentor, but now he looked at her with a mix of concern and suspicion. "The media is tearing you apart. And what about this USB drive? What's on it?" Helen's hands trembled as she clutched a glass of water. "Lies," she whispered. "All lies." But deep down, she knew the truth. She had taken shortcuts. What had started as genuine faith had spiraled into something she could no longer control. The miracles had been real at first. She had prayed with all her heart, and God had answered. But as the demands grew, as the crowd swelled, as the offerings piled higher and higher, the pressure to deliver became unbearable. When the miracles didn't come, she had resorted to other methods. Helen's mind flashed back to that fateful day when she first crossed the line. It had been a particularly crowded service, and a desperate woman had begged for healing. Helen had prayed, but nothing happened. The woman's wails grew louder, the congregation's faith wavered, and Helen had panicked. That night, she had confided in Pastor Kingsley, who had suggested a solution. "God helps those who help themselves," he had said. "Sometimes faith needs a little encouragement." And so the deception had begun. Actors were hired, stories were fabricated, and Helen's reputation as Mama the miracle worker grew larger than life. But with that growth came the lies, and with the lies came the guilt. Ruth's quest for justice. While Helen's empire teetered on the edge of collapse, Ruth was far from finished. She had spent months gathering her evidence, interviewing former members of the church who had seen behind the curtain. There was the man who had been promised healing in exchange for a sizable love offering only to be abandoned when his illness persisted. There was the woman who had been paid to act as though she had been blind and miraculously healed. And there was the disgruntled former assistant who had leaked receipts and contracts proving the elaborate schemes. It's not just about exposing Helen, Ruth told a journalist during an interview. It's about protecting the people who trusted her, who gave everything they had to her, only to be betrayed. Ruth's story gained traction, and soon, authorities got involved. Investigations were launched into Forever Living Church's finances, and the findings were damning. Lavish spending, unaccounted-for donations, and suspicious transactions painted a picture of greed and corruption. Ruth's resolve didn't waver even as she faced personal threats. Anonymous messages warned her to stop. Her car tires were slashed, and her home was vandalized with messages like "Stay silent and God's wrath awaits you." But Ruth remained undeterred. To her, the risks were worth the truth. The fall. The day Helen was arrested, the skies over Lagos were grey and heavy with rain. Cameras flashed as she was escorted out of her mansion in handcuffs. Supporters and detractors alike gathered outside, some crying and praying, others shouting for justice. In court, Helen sat silently as the evidence was presented. Videos of staged miracles, testimonies from victims, and records of financial misconduct were laid bare. The woman who had once commanded thousands with a single word now looked small and broken. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" the judge asked. Helen's voice was barely a whisper. "I lost my way," she said. "I wanted to do God's work, but I let the world corrupt me." Tears streamed down her face as she looked out at the courtroom. "I'm sorry." Her words, though sincere, did little to sway the judge. Helen was sentenced to 10 years in prison, her fall from grace making headlines around the world. Aftermath. Forever Living Church was disbanded, its assets seized and redistributed to the communities it had exploited. Ruth became a symbol of courage and integrity, though she shied away from the spotlight. "I didn't do this for fame," she said in a final interview. "I did it for the people who needed to know the truth." Despite her reluctance for attention, Ruth's bravery inspired countless others to speak out against corruption in religious institutions. A movement began, calling for transparency and accountability in churches across Nigeria and beyond. As for Helen, she was sentenced to several years in prison. But even behind bars, she sought redemption. She started a small prayer group with fellow inmates, teaching them the lessons she had learned the hard way. "Faith isn't about miracles," she told them. "It's about the quiet strength to do what's right, even when it's hard." Over time, Helen's humility and genuine remorse began to touch the lives of those around her. She helped several women in the prison rebuild their faith and find hope in their darkest moments. Though her actions could never erase the pain she had caused, she found solace in the small good she could still do. And so, the story of Helen Church came to an end not as a tale of miracles, but as a cautionary story of how easily power can corrupt, and how redemption is always possible, even in the darkest of places. Ruth's courage and Helen's downfall would echo for years to come, a reminder that truth and justice, though often slow, will always prevail. Like and subscribe for more folktale stories like this. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video.